about shooting in small spaces. I know that shooting in small spaces is the reality for most of us. I don't have a ton of space in New York. Having a giant studio is a luxury that most photographers don't necessarily have. You know, you're doing portrait work, maybe you're photographing in your garage, and I think there's actually benefits that no one talks about that you get only when you shoot in a small space. And I'll let you in on a little secret as well. When I shoot, if I get to shoot something in a larger studio, we usually end up kind of making a small space for our clients anyway by using here my fake small space, which I've just made out of V-flats, like a house of cards. So if it comes tumbling down at some point during this video, don't be too surprised. But, you know, I've done some of my favorite work, especially with lighting, in like garages. I used to even shoot in my tiny apartment in New York with 8-foot ceilings and all the furniture around and just cram people in. I would staple a backdrop to the wall, and I could just about get away with doing standing poses on my subjects. So I'll walk you through why a small space is actually kind of the default for great lighting, and how it turns, again, it turns a one light setup into an infinite light setup, a billion lights really, really beautifully. So before I really dive into that, I just wanted to talk about kind of the difference between a deep versus a very, like a deep versus a very shallow modifier. So here I have what I call the Elechrome Rotolux Deep, and it's the 100 centimeter. So I have it labeled just with 100 deep when I have it in my sort of where I keep my modifiers. So it's a fairly, it's not a shallow modifier, it's more like tulip shaped, you know, it's kind of like that. The light that comes out the front is gonna go in a particular direction. I'm gonna bring in my model Jenna. Please come, Jenna, you can bring the little chair actually. She has a chair that I gave her, a stool, so you can sit comfortably. Perfect, here, I'll hold on to that. For you, I'll have you right in the middle here. Perfect, and I'll give you that so you can hang out and stay comfortable. And we're gonna dim the studio lights that I have lighting me right now a little bit to show you kind of the effect just of what this small modifier is doing and how it's spreading out in the studio. So if you remember, with the flashlight, you know, it has a shape, and I can shape it with this little slidey bit, and I talked yesterday about how I'm just going to look at the shape of it, and then I can imagine how that extrapolates onto the spread of the light itself. The same thing is applicable also for my 100 centimeter or any modifier that you have in the studio, really at all. So actually, Jenna, I'm going to change my mind and have you step out because I'm realizing I'm going to put the light exactly where you are. Thank you. You can keep the stool there. Yeah, thank you so much. Brilliant. All right, thank you. You made this picture much better, but I just have to show this for a moment. So the spread of this, if you look here, you can sort of see, I'm going to point it just into this corner. Maybe I'll get it in a little bit more. You can see very clearly as you look around this little box that I've built that it cuts off there on the ceiling. There's a line where it stops. It doesn't, it goes probably about here, and it goes probably around here. That's the spread of it. And as I stand and I do that exercise where I go where the light is, you know, like I would with my subject, I can see, as soon as I walk around this, yeah, it makes sense. Where it cuts off here is exactly the point where I no longer can see the front of the modifier. So if we remember, let's just look at light the way we think it works, because that's how it works. The light part, you can see it with your eyes, is going to be lighting up the image. There is still a central part here, I think, where it's the brightest. And as you come to the edges, it slowly fades away. And this is actually a very soft modifier because you can see the edge here is a very gradual transition from bright to not quite so bright. And as we get past the edge here, we're not getting much of the front of this modifier at all. I can't see it anymore. So that's as simple as that. So I'll show you what this looks like with a shallow modifier, which I'll bring in now. So now I've got the medium Photech umbrella. If you try to buy it online, there's 3 sizes. This is the medium size of the Photech umbrella. So the shape of it is much more shallow. So you have like, it would be the difference between like a tulip and a wide open flower. So we already can tell the direction of the light is probably going to flay out a little bit further. So just showing you the shape of it here, the depth is much more narrow in this dimension, which is also great because in a small space, you can really get it tuck it into the corner of the ceiling. That's why I love the medium Photech or any of the Photechs, because they're fairly shallow, and for small spaces, that's a real benefit. So let's just have the same little exercise and we can see how the spread of this light is. And again, I'm going to just look at it. I want you to do this with whatever modifier you have. You don't have to go out and buy the exact ones, because I'll show you in this segment why a small space is so forgiving with whatever modifier you use. But as I can see here, the shape of this, as it's coming here, and then the front of this modifier as well, I can see it, and it actually extends a little further, and the light is spreading out. And again, we have a super smooth gradient as it goes from, there's not really a hard section on this modifier, but as it goes from where most of the light is hitting, and it kind of fades away, and then you can see this line right here is, if I put my face there, I can see that's exactly where there is no more of that front of the modifier facing, so you get that edge. The same thing on this side. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it gives you sort of an edge right there where the light falls off. So again, the same thing on the ceiling. You can see a little bit how that light is spreading. So you have a difference between what the more focused versus the more open modifiers is doing. But one of the reasons I wanted to show you the difference here is it's not that much. In other words, I would not get stuck in the trap of trying to buy a different modifier because you're not getting the same results that I am. It is so much more efficient. You know, from a business perspective, I love being efficient with my resources that I have, and I love for you to be able to use whatever modifiers you already own, the lights you already own. You could do this, everything we're doing in this segment, or the one light segment, with a speed light and the cheapest modifier that you can find. Because what I'm trying to drive home is that, yes, it's nice to have great expensive modifiers, but buying expensive modifiers is also a way to go broke real quickly. And what makes you a great photographer is using, or not even a great photographer, because I don't like to draw that line. I'm just saying, like an efficient photographer, use what you have. If you go into a studio and you don't have, this exact modifier, well, I'm going to show you how we can use the advantage of a small space to make soft light in any space whatsoever. And the smaller, the better, as long as the walls are painted white, or a light color. And most people in their garages or their kitchens or their living rooms are in a good place with what they've got around them to use the small space as a bounce surface. So let me put the studio lights back on so you can see me properly. We don't have to shoot this entire segment in the dark. And we're going to bring in our model. I'll reset this a little bit. I'll bring in the model, and we're going to shoot with this medium Photech soft lighter when I come back. So we've got our model Jenna in this, is this periwinkle, would you say?
Yeah.
I don't know colors. It's blue dress. We're just going to I'm going to show you a few different effects. But before I do, I wanted to talk about tethering. So tethering is one of these words that people throw about. And if you don't know what it is, it's like you Google it and everyone just assumes you already know what it is. So if you notice here, I've got the camera connected with a cable to the computer. So there's this magic thing that happens, which is anytime I take a picture, let's see, I don't know where I'm at with my light of my, there we go. It immediately shows up or with a small delay shows up on the computer. It's called tethering. I don't have to rely on the screen at the back of my camera, and it's a really great way to kind of get a good idea of what you're shooting as you're shooting. For anyone that's starting out, I really recommend setting this up for yourself with a laptop. Nowadays, you can do it with an iPad, and there's various apps, Capture One, Lightroom, there's others that will do it. But the nice thing is it allows you to make adjustments to the image. Let's say I want to bring up my exposure here, add a little bit of contrast, and every time I shoot, it's going to apply that same setting to the next image. For the sake of this segment, I'm going to keep the images completely untouched in the camera. They're coming out exactly as I shot them. Sorry, on the computer, they're going to be exactly as I shot them. All right, so again, I'm going to be at 1/200th of a second on my shutter speed. I'm at f5.6 on my aperture, and I'm going to be at ISO 200. That's my starting point for everything. I'm going to do an ambient light test. So I'm going to take the trigger off. So now no light is firing, and I want that frame to be just like that, almost completely black, no light at all. That means as soon as I start adding my light, I know that everything I'm adding is what's affecting the image. The strobe is the only thing showing in the photograph. Lovely, good. So in a small space, let's see what the size of this space is. I know that the ceiling here is 8 foot because that's the length of the V-flats. And we've actually ended up with about 6.5 feet. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone's even shooting. If you have a room that's only 6.5 feet wide, I think that should go in the Guinness Book of Records. So it's a hallway, very wide hallway, very small room. But this is what I was saying at the beginning. We end up shooting in these kind of small spaces all the time anyway, because we build these little boxes for our clients. It also makes them feel, I think, really comfortable because it's like kind of protected little cocoon in that world. Now, for lighting, there's a bunch of magical things that happen here. So it's gonna get a little bit technical, but I'll walk you through it with demonstrations. So don't just turn off because you get that feeling of like, I can't understand this. If you keep watching, you'll get it. I'm going to demonstrate over and over why we get those amazing effects from shooting in a small space. So I've got my light set up. I've got it on what's called a C-stand. There's a company called Century that used to make these, and therefore it's called a C-stand. This is a 40-inch C-stand with an arm, and you can buy them in a kit. I've got a sandbag on there to stop it from falling off. I've got my favorite light, which is the ELB Electrum 500 watt ELB 500. It's a battery powered light. I don't have to plug it in. I showed that to you in the one light segment where I have the small head that I like because it's really light, and I can take this off because I don't have too much weight up here. You want to always be safe. You never want your C-stand or any of your stands to fall over and hit your model. I'm not going to tell you that you have to buy a C-stand, but I like them because they're sturdy. You can put a sandbag on it, and then it doesn't collapse onto my model or my subject when I'm shooting. That's very important for me. I'm going to bring this in a little bit closer. Let's start with exactly where we were with the one light setup. I'm going to come in very close, bring the bottom of this to eye height. Perfect. Right about here. Let's see, Jenna, we might switch this so that your face is, because now I can't shoot past the C-stand, which is a thing that happens, by the way. You're always fighting with the equipment. Another thing I could do is just boom this out a little bit. And maybe even like this. Good, bring this a little lower. There we go, I'm just gonna turn that like that. Perfect. And sorry, I meant like switching so your feet are pointing in this direction. Yeah, I'll just move this for you. Perfect, there we go. So in the one light setup, I showed you how we actually end up with the light fairly close to our subject, and then we have our bounce surface on the opposite side. So if I was building this, as I'm doing right now, as a real setup, I've done my ambient light test. As always, I've got my camera connected to the computer so I can see the images as they come in, and so can you. We've got our subject feeling comfortable and glamorous. I'm just going to take a test shot. So immediately you can see that we have that situation that we had in the one light video where we have the light bouncing on our subject. Most of it is coming from one side, and then we have this huge surface that's bouncing the light back. So let me show you just what the bounce surface looks like and what the front of the modifier looks like. So we really break down what's happening in this image. Perfect, there we go. I'll take a picture of the front of the modifier. Lovely, shows a nice even spread. And then I'll take a picture of my bounce surface. Lovely, and that's such a scrumptious, beautiful, bounced light coming back at my subject. So as I have those both together, they combine to make this image where we have directionality of light. It's clearly coming from camera right, from this side, and then the bounce is coming off from camera left. Now, you can see right now, the bounce is bouncing all over the place. If I take a wide shot here, take a shot that shows the entire setup. Yes, perfect. You can see in this image on the screen that the light is, I can trace it actually from where I am. It's coming in, bouncing off this. It's hitting the ceiling a little bit. It's hitting the back. You know, we looked at the spread of the light. It's going all over this space. And then even this surface is being lit up because that light is bouncing from that side back onto her and filling in all of these shadows. So we get this really bright, very spilly light, where the light is just going all over the place. This is the biggest problem that I know people have when they're shooting in small spaces. They come to me with, I've painted my studio black. I've got fabric all over my walls so that I never have any bounce. And I'm going to show you how to make that not a problem in a small space at all. And to do so, I'm going to ask my assistant Magnus to come in, and we're going to handhold this light so I can show you quicker the modifications we can make for this. So to do that, I've actually made, we've taken a light stand, we've taken the legs off of it, and we've made this thing that I lovingly call the stick, which is the central column of a light stand. I've wrapped tennis tape around the handle so you can hold it, and it's actually really neat for sort of this kind of setup when I work with an assistant the way we're going to do right now. You don't have to work with an assistant, but for the sake of, you know, I say you don't have to work with an assistant, and it's true. Most of you, or most people don't start out shooting with an assistant. Anyone that wants to go kind of on the commercial track or wants to get like higher paying jobs with, you know, bigger jobs, it's so useful not to have to do all of the work itself. When you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with someone that is your subject, you want to spend as much time as you can getting them comfortable, interacting with them, rather than building the lights. If you're shooting by yourself, you'll have that moment, which I have also when I shoot by myself, where I say to my subject, let's say Jenna here was paying me to do pictures for her modeling portfolio. I'd say, Jenna, I need to change the light. Can you go have a cup of tea, please, for 5 minutes while I do that? And if you have an assistant, you can say, oh, just give me 30 seconds and we'll be ready to shoot the next look. So it's not that you're a less good photographer because you're not touching every single part of the shoot every single time. You've gotten to that place where you can work with someone if you choose to do so. And I used to trade assisting time with other photographers in my area. I made friends with lots of photographers, and we would just help each other for free on each other's shoots, and it was a fantastic symbiotic relationship, and I really learned a lot. If you have the light on a stand, you can go over to the stand and make the modifications every time. For this, we're going to be able to shoot really quickly lots of different looks. But First, I want to talk you through about how can we make this more dramatic. So actually, I'll hold it for one. Okay, perfect. So this is where we started. When we look at the spread, we know it was going like back here, a little bit onto this, on all the surfaces. As soon as I bring the light, I feather it more, I'm getting less and less light on the backdrop directly. So I'll have you hold it right here, Magnus. Perfect. So whereas before it was much more wrapped in on her, I'm now feathering it a little bit, and I'm literally just doing the exercise in my head where I'm going, oh, as soon as I get past this line here on my light, I can no longer see the front of the modifier. When it was wrapped in more, I could see that the line ends about here. As he's feathering it, keep going, the line ends up about here. I'm literally putting less light on the backdrop. So let's see the difference that that makes. Again, I'll shoot this a little wide so you can see the effect and the difference. And it's a subtle difference. But immediately you can already see we start to have less light on the backdrop, and what happens on her is it already gets a little bit more dramatic. Okay, let's do 2 shots, Magnus. Let's do a wrapped in, where it was. And Jenna, you're going to keep your face directly pointed at me both times. Perfect, and then feather a bit. Good, thank you. So, it's a subtle effect. Nice. So, this top image is much more wrapped, and the bottom image, it's more feathered. We haven't changed the power of the light whatsoever. It's the same power, but on this image here where it's more wrapped, so more on her, you can see that in the modifier and when I show it to you in this view. In this image on the left, there's more hitting her directly, but there's also more light bouncing off that surface on the left side of camera and bouncing back onto her. So when it's wrapped in a little bit more, it's bouncing here and almost directly bouncing back at her. When we have it feathered, not as much, we end up with it bouncing here. Most of the light is going to bounce directly back at this and not hit her. So that central column, we're wasting it a little bit when we feather, but using it just for soft fill on this edge. So let's take that to its logical extension, which is to feather even more. Lovely. And it immediately gets more dramatic just because we are now not letting her be lit as much. She's just catching only the edge, whereas here, she's catching all of it. Here, she's catching only the edge. Most of the light that's lighting her is probably bouncing off of this surface over here. So by bringing the light more feathered is one of the ways we can immediately make it more dramatic. She's just getting that little edge. You know, we talked about that spray hose and that lovely calming, cooling summer effect of being on the edge versus having that light, the water like blasting you in the face. And that's the difference we have here as well. This is like she's getting really the brunt of the light, and here she's just on those edges, and we're relying just on the bounce to get that really soft light. So let's break that down again. I'm going to have Mike come in with the flag, and we're going to show you the flag that's next to you there, the small flag. And I'm going to just break down again what's happening with our, I'll show you where to hold it, with our light directly, and what's happening with just the bounce surfaces. So I'm going to have Mike step in behind Magnus there. And Jenna, you just nod when you can no longer see most of the front of this. So Mike, bring it in closer to her. Yeah, closer to her. So when you can't see this anymore. Okay, good. So she can't see that. That means she's not going to be lit by it. Now she should only be being lit by the bounce itself. There we go. That's our analysis of just what the bounce surfaces are doing. So that's what's filling in. And then when we take that flag away, Mike, same shot. Good. That's the two of them combined together. So you can see in a small space, this is the effect of all of these billions of little points of light reflecting back. It's bouncing into the ceiling. It's coming off the backdrop a little bit. It's bouncing around. Mike, you're good, thank you. It's bouncing from this wall on the side. And you've got this giant bounce that we're using to bring those shadows in really, really subtly. So if we wanted to, there's sort of a, I'm not going to talk about ratios, but there is sort of a ratio happening here. She is probably about 2 feet away from this light, 2.5 feet, but the light has to travel so far to get to this surface and bounce back to her. That's probably, I would say, 4.5 feet. I would say like 8 feet, 2.5 meters. This is probably about 60 centimeters. So, you know, if you're close to a candle, you're going to get the most light. As you bring the candle away, you're going to get a lot less. So the light has to travel so much further to get to the bounce surface to come to her. So what happens if we bring her closer to that bounce surface without changing the distance that she is from the modifier? So let's try that. We're going to move you over. Your feet will probably end up on this wall a little bit, but we'll do the same exact thing. Lovely, let's try that. And Magnus is going to come in and try to get it about the same distance. I think that looks about right. So if you're following along at home, what do you think will happen? Remember, we did the tunnel demonstration in the One Light video, where we start to have that box where the light is kind of bouncing around more evenly than coming just from one side. So what's going to happen now is it's going to feel much more like it's coming from the front, much more even on both sides, because the light coming out of the modifier still is traveling only the same distance, but the light traveling from the modifier to the wall and back at her now has a shorter distance to go, and therefore it'll be a little bit brighter. So let's see that. Lovely. So we really see, bring your chin up a bit, Jenna. We really see, that's lovely. We really see the effect compared to, let me go to that previous shot. Here, compared to here, where she's, no, that's the same shot. 1 second, please. There we go. As we bring her closer to that bounce surface, she's further away in this frame. As we bring her closer to that bounce surface, the light that's bouncing has less far to travel and therefore loses less power as it gets back to her. So let's make this a super dramatic light. I'll have Jenna go back to the center. Good. So stay with me here because you'll get it before the end of this. It gets a little bit technical and I don't want to make a technical video, but it's fascinating when you get it. So we're keeping the distance of the modifier. Actually, I have an idea. Why don't we bring this all the way over to really make this effect bigger? So we increase the distance here between this, and then her. Now we're like 10 feet, like 3.5 meters away, but this is the same distance to her over here. So the bounce will be a lot less and it should get more contrasty. Let's see if it does. I'm just going to come a little closer to her, I think. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Immediately it gets more contrasty. I'll do one more. And I'll have Mike come in with the flag just so we can see how much less of that bounce is bouncing back onto her, just because she's gone further away from the bounce, actually. Perfect. So Jenna, just tell me when you can't see the modifier anymore. Mike, come in. There. There, okay, perfect. So that's just the light coming from the bounce surface. So if I can easily pull up that other image where we did this demonstration before, if you compare that, yeah, you can't really see it that clearly, but she is further away from the bounce surfaces. There's a little bit of light now bouncing off the top of the box, coming in on her, but you can see the fill, that base layer that's like just filling everything, is really complex because it's bouncing around all sorts of places. Thank you, Mike. You're good? All right, perfect. So as we bring her over to this side more, we can literally use this as a slider for how balanced we want the light to be. It's exactly the same as moving the V-flat in closer and creating that tunnel for her. The same effect will happen if we move her back You'll also kind of even it out. We take that tunnel concept and turn it into 3 dimensions because you now have surfaces on each side. So let me show you what that looks like from a top-down perspective. So to give you the top-down